Administration, Finance, Recreation and Parks, Public Safety and Public Works Committee meeting for February 9, 2021. The purpose of the committee meetings are for the city departments to pass along information to the city council and discuss initiatives listed on the published agenda. By ordinance, the committee consists of the mayor, members of the city council, and the city administrator. The ordinance mandates the city administrator as the chair of the meetings. This is a public meeting, not a public hearing. Therefore, while the meeting is open to the public, we do not take public comments or questions during the committee meetings. Public comments or questions are received at the regularly scheduled city council meetings held at 7 p.m. in the city council chambers or virtually on the second and fourth Monday of each month. The first item on today's agenda, we're going to do the public works agenda. The first item on today's agenda is the approval of the Public Safety and Public Works Committee meeting for January 12th, 2021. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion approved by Councilmember Judy. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Wilsey. Any questions or discussion? All in favor, please raise your hands. And it is unanimous. Thank you. Moving on to public safety fire. Item number 2, consideration of a resolution to submit a 2021 fireworks tax grant to the Georgia Firefighter Standards and Training Council, GFSTC. Chief Puffins.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm seeking approval to submit the application for the Georgia Fireworks Tax Grant. The grant that we're seeking is to purchase a fire extinguisher simulator that would be used to teach the public how to use a fire extinguisher. Currently, the extinguisher simulator we use is a propane unit. You have to use it outside, and it costs quite a bit of money because we have to use live fire extinguishers, then get them refilled. This is a digital simulator where you have a screen that simulates the fire on various situations, a kitchen fire, a bed fire, a couch fire, and you use a simulated fire extinguisher, and if you apply it properly, the computer makes the fire go down. If you don't, it goes up. So it's a way of training people to use fire extinguishers without actually having live fire. This unit costs $25,168. Our share on the grant would be a 10% share, which would cost the city $2,516. And like I said, I'm seeking approval to submit the application for this grant.
Motion to approve.
Thanks, Chief. Motion to approve by Councilman Palermo. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Wilsey. Any questions or discussion? All in favor, please raise your hands. Unanimous. Thank you. Thanks, Chief.
Good luck.
Thank you.
No items from police. We'll move on to public works. Item number 3, consideration for the mayor and our city administrator to sign a memorandum of understanding between the city of Roswell and Georgia Department of Transportation for the Atlanta Street State Route 9 Waterline Relocation Project. Ms. Isel.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm here to request approval to sign the memorandum of understanding with GDOT. We have brought this to you in April of 2020 to agree upon the breakdown of costs between GDOT and the city for the realignment of this water line for this construction project. We had installed this water line in 2010 based on the original alignment and based on some changes between GDOT and city design requirements. We're going to need to move this water line. The breakdown of cost is 76% for GDOT and 24% for the city. Of that, the Water and Sewer Fund will fund $150,000 of that, and that's for betterments that we're going to be able to achieve through this project. At the time that we put the line in 2010, there were some easements that we were not able to get, and so we were not able to install the line completely. We had to connect to some of our older infrastructure. This project will allow us to have new infrastructure all along the way. So the balance of that money would actually be eligible for T-SPLOST funds for the city funds. I can answer any questions.
Thanks, Sheriff. Floor is open.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Councilmember Judy.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Wilsey. Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Unanimous. Thank you. Item number 4, consideration for the mayor and or city administrator to award contracts for the solid waste transfer station replacement project in the total amount of $3,257,810. Saxon.
Thank you. So we are bringing the contracts to you to build the transfer station. I want to introduce Jason Shepard. He's with us this evening. He is the engineer of record from Burns and McDonnell. That is the firm that worked with us from concept through design. They're going to stay on board with us to do the construction phase services for this project as well. We issued the invitation to bid in November, and we received 5 offers for pre-qualification. Of those, we had to reject 2. We did receive 2 bids for the project, and we were pleased to see that the low bidder, which is BM&K Construction and Engineering, at just under 2.9 million, was under our engineer's estimate, which was just over 3.1 million. So that was great news. So included in these contracts are the contract for the contractor, contract for Burns and Mac, our engineers. Also, we're going to be issuing a task order to SM&E. They're also an on-call engineer for us. They'll be doing the materials testing and the geotechnical work for us during construction. And then, as we've done on a number of projects previously, we're also including some money for owner-directed work for unforeseen circumstances as we get into construction, such as unsuitable materials, which you've seen in construction projects in the past. And as far as funding goes, this project was currently funded, expected budget was $3.1 million. We're getting a $3 million GFA loan, which Ryan's going to be talking to you about in the next committee. And the balance, the $257,810, will be paid for out of the solid waste fund. That's all I have for you.
Any questions from the council? Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you. So, quick question. Do you have a time for completion, estimated time for completion of this project, starting and finishing?
Yes, it's going to be a 10-month project. We'll probably get a notice to proceed in March or early April out to the contractor. The first 6 months is going to be the construction of the new station. And then the following 4 months will be the demolition of the existing station and finishing out on all of our access points. And I should mention that during that time, there are going to be periods where we're going to have to suspend the customer drop off at the transfer station for safety reasons because of construction traffic. So that is something that we'll be doing as well and getting that information out to the public.
Great. Thank you.
Any further questions or comments from council? Councilmember Wiltie.
Yeah, I'd just like to say I'm very pleased to see this moving forward. I know this is a much needed and much anticipated improvement. So I think it excited to see it moving forward and know that it will improve the service that we provide our citizens. So with that, I just motion to approve.
Motion approved by Councilmember Wiltie.
I'll second that as long as it doesn't have the red roof.
Seconded by Councilmember Judy with a condition of no red roof. Questions or comments from the council?
I would like to point out once again that not only is this an improvement to our infrastructure, but it's also a possible revenue stream. And we in Roswell are always looking for a revenue stream that is not impacting our residents. So thank you, Sharon. Good job. You and Dan, awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor.
Any further questions or comments from the council? All in favor, please raise your hands. And it is unanimous. Thank you. Thanks, Sharon.
Thank
We're
you.
going to take a quick 5-minute recess while we flip the system, but I also want to mention that Councilmember Tyson did call me earlier. He had an unforeseen personal situation going on, so he's not going to make it tonight. And we will be back in 5 minutes. And it passes unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to administration, item number 2. Consideration to implement employee pay range and pay increase as recommended by the 2020 compensation and classification study. Mr. Harper. Jim, you there? Okay, we'll come back to number 2. Moving on to item number 3, consideration of a resolution to accept the 2021 Community Development Block Grant, CDBG allocations, and approval of budget amendment BA 22570101-02-22-21 in the amount of $500,000. Mr. Alford.
Yeah, can everybody hear me okay? All right, cool. Yeah, so this is just a resolution to accept our 2021 Community Development Block Grant funds. Right now, they're estimated at $500,000. We opened this application process up back in September. We received an unprecedented 17 applications or proposals. Staff reviewed those proposals and scored those proposals, and we presented our staff recommendations here tonight for you guys. We recommended a top-down approach, selecting one of the city's top scoring programs, and then dispersing with the rest of the funds through the top scoring nonprofits. That was included in your packets. And we need a resolution. Right now, the funding is estimated, so there will be an official resolution with the exact amounts. That's how we've typically done it in the process. But getting something approved tonight in resolution allows our nonprofits to go ahead and start spending the funds, knowing that they've at least been approved something at this point.
Thanks, Charles. Floor is open.
Motion to approve.
Motion approved by Councilmember Judy. For a second?
Second.
Second by the mayor. Any further questions or discussion on the item? Councilmember Spada.
Thank you. So Charles, quick question. The Enable in community, do they serve 100% Roswell? Or they serve also other nearby cities?
Their footprint exceeds Roswell, but the homes that they're requesting the funds for are all located in Roswell. So they're all benefit Roswell residents.
Okay, because I see that you didn't include anything for Roswell Housing Authority, which definitely is 100% Roswell resident in needs. So what was the criteria to leave outside Roswell Housing Authority?
Let's see here. Let me see staff recs.
And I see YMCA of Alpharetta.
It was just based off of the Roswell Housing Authority's score. We went from a top-down scoring approach. And the YMCA of Alpharetta, they use the funds for out-of-school or after-school scholarships at Roswell Elementary School. So it does serve Roswell Elementary students. The physical location is out of Alpharetta, though.
Thank you, Mr. Alford. I appreciate it. I have 2 questions. One question is similar to what Councilman Zapata just asked regarding Senior Services North Fulton. Now, help me understand how that's set up. Is that 100% just for Roswell residents, or does that range exceed outside Roswell as well?
The scope of the entire program goes all through North Fulton, but the funds that they are requesting for and what we reimburse them for are for Roswell citizens only. So they pick up, traditionally they used to pick up at the Roswell Senior Center, but they've expanded that now. When they apply for reimbursement through us, they give us the address of the people, the beneficiaries that it's basically a voucher program. And they itemize the Roswell residents that they're serving in that, using our funds.
Excellent. So yeah, that sounds great, and I appreciate it. I guess just another question I have was, you mentioned just based on the scoring regarding Roswell Housing Authority. And so I guess as a part of the scoring, checking to see if they purely focus on supporting Roswell residents, is that a part of the scoring, or is that not taken into account as a part of the score?
For the scoring, it wasn't. All of the programs have to serve, or the funds that they're requesting from all of these projects have to serve only Roswell residents. So that's not really incorporated in the scoring. I'm reading the notes that we had here for their project, and let's see. It put the estimates for the materials are partially incomplete. The staffing, size of the staffing was a concern, and worried about being able to coordinate all the work that it was a really big project, and it was really, I'm talking about the Myrtle Pelfrey Pines here. It was really two different public facility projects. It was rehab and security improvements. And the way they split it up, it was just very confusing. And that's why they scored lower than the others.
Okay. And then actually, and I guess, so just to reiterate, I believe you already answered this, but just to be 100% clear. So again, with the enable/in community, those housing improvements will 100% be just for houses within the city of Roswell.
That's correct.
And then you said for the transportation options, that will only be for, those are kind of like vouchers that are only going to be for Roswell seniors.
Correct.
Thank you. Oh, and then I guess, I think that's all my questions right now. Thank you, Mr. Alford.
Councilmember Hall.
Thank you, Gary. Just a quick question. So in situations when, like in the example of Roswell Housing Authority, where there was effectively a defect or something that's not clear, do they have an opportunity to cure that defect and present, or they're just once it's done, it's done?
With the application process, we really can't go back to them, and because then we'd have to go back and do it for every one of them. With 17 proposals, it could be an endless process of them, revising their application. So we really have to take the applications at their face value.
So it's best if everybody learns how to complete and properly submit a grant request.
Right. If I think it's a technical issue or something like that, then I might go back to them and note something if it completely left something off. But if it's just the way they worded something, going back and getting it clarified is hard to do with 17 different proposals.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to approve in a second. Any further questions or comments from the council? All in favor, please raise your hands. And it is unanimous. Thank you. Thanks, Charles. Moving on to item number 4, consideration to approve the postponement of Alive in Roswell until July. Ms. Ward.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone, Mayor and Council. I'm here with Rusty Pruitt, and we are going to speak to you this evening about events in 2021, special events, and our Recreation and Parks events. Rusty's going to share the screen with us, and then we'll get started. So the overview of our presentation. The overview of our presentation for this evening is we're going to discuss some major events, and those are events that have large attendance, kind of difficult to control the volume of people and maintain social distancing. They're rarely ticketed, very almost impossible to fence in, have several points of entry. So we're going to discuss those this evening and then give our recommendations and then open it up for a discussion to see how you feel. Next. I'm going to speak to you first about Alive in Roswell 2021. We spoke to our sponsors and vendors and we got some feedback from them. We spoke to 12 sponsors. All 12 really were positive about us postponing until July. They felt that that was probably the most safe and smart thing to do right now, considering the virus is still out there, the vaccines are slow coming. They were all willing to take a look again in April to see about July. And if we decided to move forward and we were in a good place, they would be on board for sponsorships. We also talked to over 50 vendors, got feedback from them. They too were all 100% behind a July start. Some of them let us keep their money from last year and some we just waitlisted. Everyone's very excited, but they just really want us to do it in a safe manner. And they were really appreciative that we took the time to reach out to them to ask. We also spoke with some surrounding cities. We spoke to Alpharetta, Milton, Johns Creek, and Decatur. Every city is not doing any big events in spring. Most are waiting until July. A couple cities are coming back with some road races, but basically just holding off. It's almost like everyone's waiting for somebody else to take the first step, but nobody's really moving. And if we look at social media from other states in the Southeast, there's nothing big going on in any of them. So our recommendation is to postpone Alive in Roswell to a start date of July. And then around April 30th, we would come back to you and look at where we are with COVID and the vaccinations. And at that point, if we need to cancel it, we would make that cancellation for July moving forward as well.
Okay, as far as recreation and parks, special events, just ran down a quick list. The Riverside Sounds has been canceled for the 2021 season. If we're able to come back at some point in time during the year, we'll do a smaller setting, try to control the numbers, and more than likely a different venue. Spoke with David Young and the Memorial Day celebration. They want to go ahead and cancel that event because it's more of an in-person event. So that has been canceled for this year. Lavender Festival held in June. The group's still working on trying to do something, but it'll be more of a programmed event, not the special event that we're used to. Slip and slide, we have to be determined on that. We can control the numbers on that and spread folks out and come, 50 as a group or whatever, but we'll wait and decide as we get closer to that. That's a June event, a July event, and an August event. The 4th of July celebration, like Chris said, we're going to try to make that decision at April 30th at the same time that we do Alive in Roswell. The bids are going out for those right now. The end of summer celebration, we need to make that decision by July 1st. And then, of course, our Youth Day Parade, we will try to do anything we can to get it to go off this year, but we will let that to be determined.
So our recommendation for this evening is the approval to postpone the start of Alive in Roswell 2021 to July. Does anyone have any questions or?
Thanks, Chris. Floor is open.
It's very unfortunate, I believe, but we're all in this boat together, and obviously the sponsors are on board with this decision and keeping our citizens safe, and vendors and sponsors and businesses is utmost importance. So I would support this, unfortunately. So motion to approve.
Motion approved by Councilor Judy. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Wilson. Any further questions or comments from the council? All in favor, please raise your hands. It is unanimous. Thank you. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Rusty.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 5, Mayor's Movie Task Force, Film Ready Update. Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Gary. In February of 2019, Mayor Henry established the Mayor's Movie Task Force, and it's an in-house task force that was to focus on movies and productions coming to the city of Roswell. Well, today it's 2 years later, and the Mayor's Movie Task Force has made some really significant progress in welcoming, inviting, and hosting productions for some films, some music videos, and commercials in and around Roswell. That's even evident today when I look out my office window and I see a very large tent. You all have seen a lot of activity here at City Hall, the Roswell Police Department and Jail, and the Roswell Parks this week for a movie that's being filmed right now. The Mayor's Movies Task Force is made up of Andy Williams and Ted Basco from Visit Roswell, Chris Ward, myself, and Jeff Leatherman here from the city. Mark Goodman is the Director of Economic and Talent Development from the Greater North Fulton Chamber of Commerce, is also one of the members of the task force. So I'm going to turn this over to Andy with Visit Roswell, and he's going to provide you with an update of the progress and certainly the successes of the Mayor's Movie Task Force. So Andy.
Thank you, Michael, and appreciate the opportunity to be with you all. Good evening to Mayor and Council, and it's good news. We're coming back to you, and as a quick refresher, when we first started out on this initiative, we really had to sit down and identify what the goals were and what we wanted to be as a community in regard to film. And we sat down and we identified the 3 key partners that we thought would be key cogs to get this thing going. Those were Visit Roswell, the Convention and Visitors Bureau, the City of Roswell, and the multiple departments that are involved with the city, and then the Greater North Fulton Chamber of Commerce, and Mark Goodman, as Michael just mentioned. I am happy to report that when it comes to judging successes, we look at a number of different things, the metrics of it, and then the actual feedback that we get from the scouts that we work directly with. For fiscal year 21, and interestingly enough, as of submitting this report last week, these numbers have actually grown. We've produced a total now of 68 leads. We've won 18 productions, and we have upped our scouts or site inspections to 30. So this is great news because the win rate, the conversion rate's up around 30% now. So of all the leads that we're generating, we've won about 30% of them. And of all the leads that have come in, we've actually gotten the scouts or the producers into market. So boots on the ground in order to showcase the city to those. And that number is 50%. So we're very happy about where this has come. Just to give you an example of where we've come this year versus last year, fiscal year 20, last year in total, we had only produced 47 leads and we had only won 2. So if you look at the new numbers, we're actually up 14 leads, up 16 wins, and up 19 site inspections, which is just, you know, from a growth standpoint, I think what it really shows is that this is working. The process is working. The stakeholders that are involved are doing what they're supposed to do, and that everybody's really working in harmony to make this happen. To go back further, prior to the task force having been established, from January of 2018 leading all the way up to June 2019, we'd only generated a total of 16 leads. So when you look at the numbers, the growth is actually certainly there, and we really think that we're just getting started now that we've got this in place. So some recent success stories. We've seen a number of different things, everything from small commercials to small independent films to, you know, different streaming service type episodes and seasons that are out there now. An example, East Roswell Park had a baby products commercial. We've done a reality television show at Roswell Town Square. We've done a number of different things in private homes. We've used sharpshooters for a film that needed a gun range. We're certainly utilizing our park system. And then recently also, the Whiskey Project was the location for an upcoming music video. Most recently, one of the bigger ones that we've landed, which really took over the City Hall parking lot, Southern Post location, the jail, was a romantic dance service, I guess you could, episode on a streaming service. Can't say the name of it, but if you Google the codes, it's pretty easy to find out what it is. The exciting thing about that is they are set to come back in a very similar footprint, early March or late March, which is going to bring in about the same amount of revenue as that one did. So we're seeing good stuff there. Just going back to some of the hot locations we would consider, we do a lot. We get a lot of requests for homes, but certainly City Hall, the Roswell Law Enforcement Center, or most commonly known as the jail. It is a vacant jail, and that is something that the scouts just come running for when they hear that we have that. Also, our municipal courtroom and council chambers are heavily sought after. So what we have learned thus far, COVID-19 did shut down studios, but it did not shut down the industry, particularly in Roswell. As soon as the Georgia Department of Economic Development's film division came out with COVID recommendations and guidelines, that's when a lot of these production companies got that, they abided by them, and got back to work. Word continues to spread that we have a large variety of locations. We continue to build on our inventory and get the word out. The industry is working fast to catch back up to lost time. It truly is an effort, and this is a key piece of this, with the partners that we work with. When we initially get the lead, whether it comes directly to us or it comes from Mark Goodman with the Greater North Fulton Chamber of Commerce, we have to turn that around very quickly. There is a very kind of a short window of time to get producers and scouts what they're looking for, especially with the competitions out there. So our standard protocol is that when a lead comes in, we drop what we were doing at that very moment to make sure that scout gets what he or she needs. And if that in turn involves communicating with Chris Ward over at the city and special events department and a number of our different partners with the Roswell Police Department and Jeff's team over at Rec and Parks, we will do whatever it takes to get the information to those individuals to get them what they need, to get them into market, to see the locations. We continue to market and promote. We have released a webinar that gives history on the film industry, talks about how impactful the film industry is, talks about how it can be a revenue generator, and then walks those business and homeowners into how to list their particular establishments on our Real Scout platform that is currently going out to a number of different HOAs and neighborhoods around the Roswell area. And of course, now just the word of mouth, seeing the tents around town, seeing things happen, the buzz is out for Roswell community partners and residents to get listed. The next up, we're working with our hotels to establish an industry rate for crew and cast. Hotels, I would say, is on down the line because we pull from a lot of the talent that already lives in the Atlanta area. However, if there are companies that are coming in from outside of town, we want to make sure that we capture those room blocks here in town so that we can benefit, from the revenue side of that as well. And also what we want to do is, as best as we can, get those hotels listed on what's called Tour Connection, so that it's almost like a travel agency for hoteliers when these production companies start to travel. We want to make sure we're taking advantage of that. We're certainly going to go after more media coverage. We've gotten some great features. Recently, last year, CW69 did a great feature on us. We want to do follow-up stories. We want to continue to go down those avenues to get people talking about us. We want to further build a database of our local service providers that have film and interest in film. So right now, we're getting our businesses and our homes listed on our Real Scout platform. Now, who are our carpenters? Who are our hairstylists, makeup professionals that can actually locally benefit when production comes into town as well? And then further down the road, kind of phase 3, as we talk about what could those extra potential incentives at the local level be. So right now, we think that we've got a great product in place. We're building on it. We're seeing successes. We're seeing the numbers add up. It's looking good at that level. Now it just becomes really continuing to market it, getting the scouts, as big of a network as it is. It's a very small network and that they are very tied into one another and take each other's opinions very seriously. So we want to make sure that we minimize any slip ups in the situation and really completely do away with those and make sure that everyone has a good experience. So going back to, we've got the metrics that have proven how successful it is, but what are the actual scouts saying? And I think this is just a testament to the actual partners that are involved in the process. Chris Ward, Jeff Leatherman, Jonathan King with Rec and Park, certainly Deputy Chief Linnea Rivard, Mark Goodman, and to Mayor Henry for your support on the task force and really letting us make this thing happen. They are key individuals in making this go off without a hitch, and everybody plays a critical role in it. We're certainly appreciative of that. But again, great testimonial from somebody who's a smaller film, felt like we treated her like she was a multi-million-dollar project. I think at the end of the day, that's the right thing to do, and we should be doing that. But again, we know that word of mouth goes a long way in this industry, and we have really reaped the benefits from being referred by a number of these different scouts who have found doing business in Roswell to be easy and beneficial for their companies. So with that said, I would love to entertain any questions.
Floor is open. Councilmember Hall.
Thank you, Gary. Thanks, Andy. Great presentation. It's very exciting. I just wanted to know, how can our Roswell residents share that promotional video or that you talked about? Where can they find that so they can share it?
Sure. It's on our Visit Roswell, Georgia YouTube channel. If HOAs and HOA board leadership has not begun reaching out and sending those through newsletters. We're working on follow-up with a number of those different HOAs. But if they can't find it, if they have any hiccups finding it online, we can send a direct link. If they just shoot me an email, awilliams@visitroswellga.com, we're happy to personally get that link over to them so that they can watch that and get listed.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Andy, awesome stuff. Thank you for everything you're doing. You and Ted are really knocking this out of the park. Mayor, thank you for putting the task force together. To all those staff members you said are great team members on these projects. Awesome. I keep getting questions from women when you're going to bring Tom Cruise and Ryan Gosling back to Roswell. So I know that Councilmember Wilsey's laughing, but yeah, I know, awesome stuff. It's really cool to actually see Roswell in the movies, and I do think we have a picturesque town to showcase and a lot of assets. But awesome work, and y'all are just killing it.
Appreciate it.
Go ahead, Mayor.
I would like to thank the task force. When I formed this task force a couple of years ago, I thought that we had something that we could really go after, but I really had no idea what we could accomplish. And with the task force meeting on a regular basis and all the partners that have really gone the extra mile to make sure we attract these industries. And if you think about it, you know, it's not just, it's transportation, it's our fire and police department. And speaking of Ryan Gosling, when he was here in town, you would think our own Roswell Police Department would have let me through the line where he was filming. But all I got was this. So for those ladies out there that are looking to get in, our police department isn't gonna let you. I hate to say it. You might have to sneak through the bushes, but no, thank you all so much. Everybody's doing a great job. It's not just on the front lines, like I said, it's the folks behind the front lines. And you know, the city of Roswell is playing a huge part in this, because we could not attract the film industry unless the city of Roswell was supporting it. So I would like to thank the citizens as well, because oftentimes the citizens, our city employees, are inconvenienced by this, frankly. Thank goodness the thrill of a Ryan Gosling sighting is worth it. So thank you all so much. This is a huge boon for the city. It's a great revenue stream. And the second time tonight, I've been able to mention the fact that it's a revenue stream that is not costing our residents any money, and that's what we're looking for. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. Any other questions or comments from the council? Gents, thank you to you and your teams. Appreciate it. All right, we're going to loop back around to item number 2. If we can get Mr. Harder back on, consideration to implement employee pay range and pay increases as recommended by the 2020 compensation and classification study. Mr. Harder.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council, and apologize for my technical bobble earlier, but thanks for letting me back in the queue here. So this item is for your consideration to implement the recommended changes that were brought forward by Evergreen Solutions. That group conducted a comprehensive classification and compensation study for us in 2020. Our city policy provides that my office periodically survey the market, look at our job descriptions, and bring back recommendations to you to ensure that we're paying market competitive pay for employees. So as I mentioned, this was completed, it began in early 2020, was completed late last summer, early fall. And prior to that, the last comp and class study we've done citywide was in 2015. So it was right on schedule to do it. We had done, as you remember, in fall of 2018, a much smaller market survey for the sworn police positions. And at that time, you did approve some pay grade adjustments, but it was time to do the entire citywide study last year. This study had two parts to it, two basic parts to it, both an internal and external part. The internal part involved employee outreach, focus groups, employees, individual employees filling out job analysis questionnaires where they say, hey, you know, they answer questions based on, here's what your job descriptions say, tell us what you actually do on a day-to-day basis. And then based on that information, it next went to their supervisor, and the supervisor could make modifications. So that was the internal part of it, to ensure that based on the compensable factors in those particular jobs, that they're assigned to the correct level in Roswell's pay grade. But then the next step was to take Roswell's pay grades and compare them to other municipalities with which we compete for labor in the market. So when we got the results of that study back, as you know from the work session on January 11th, it showed that since our pay ranges hadn't been adjusted and looked at thoroughly in 5 years, that we're behind. We were about 9% on average behind the 50th percentile. So that's important to note because we're 9% on average behind the average of these other municipalities, okay? So the recommendation of the study is to increase Roswell's pay grades, an average of 9%. That would make us competitive again at the 50th percentile. And then to slot employees into their new pay grade at the same range penetration where they currently are. So if someone's just above the minimum now in their current pay range, they would be just above the minimum by the same percent in the new pay range. You know, because of budget challenges, restrictions, the times we're in, the recommendation is that this can be done in 2 phases. And the recommendation to you all for your consideration is to do the first phase, or roughly half of this, effective in March of 21. So that would have an impact on the current fiscal year with the pay changes and the benefits costs, including increases for part-timers of about $934,000. And then in January of 2022, at the midpoint of next fiscal year, implement the remainder of the recommendation, or the second half. And that would have an impact on FY22, the upcoming fiscal year, of about $4.2 million. And certainly that's our recommendation. Implementing these changes will enable us to be competitive when we advertise positions in a certain range, help us retain the employees we do have. And so with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Floor is open. Councilman Judy.
Mr. Harner, you look like you're filming from the jail, actually.
Yeah, they're waiting right outside my door. So.
You in the movie? Anyway, so this is a pretty obvious question. Just want to make sure Mr. Luckett and the team are on board with this and see that we're going to be able to sustain this in this step form going through the next few years.
Yes, so as we showed you in the mid-year budget presentation, you know, we do have funding available in the current year to fund this immediate, the immediate amount that would be needed for March 1st. And then as we showed you in the 5-year forecast yesterday, we were able to fund the implementation of the full comp study over the next couple of years. You wouldn't see the full year actually hit until FY 2023. So that was kind of the point, was to try and space this out a little more so it would be a little bit easier to digest. But we do believe that we have the funds available, and we anticipate the funds available to be able to fund this.
Any other questions from the council? Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you. So, thank you, Mr. Harner. Very, a lot of information, a lot of. So what I would like to see, I've been pulling different pages from the presentation, but I think it will be helpful to have one spreadsheet where you have the current minimum, midpoint, and maximum salary for every single grade. And then you have another column for the proposed minimum, midpoint, maximum. And then another column where you have the comparison with the North Fulton City. I don't know, maybe you just have one number there, it might be the midpoint. I'm not expecting to see the complete range for the North Fulton average to see who are we going to be competing in terms of the salary. And then, how many employees per grade. I see that you have all these, all this information in different pieces I've been trying to pull from the presentation, but I think it would be very helpful to have one spreadsheet so we can see all the grades, how many employees per grade, what is the current minimum, midpoint, maximum, what is the proposed minimum, midpoint, maximum, and what is paying the North Fulton average of North Fulton cities for this grade. So in this case, we can see where we really can start with, because we're talking about let's do half now and half later, but I would like to dig in more into where we identify the personnel who is really behind, who maybe is on the pay grade 501, which we really help them to pay the bills versus like the 622 grade that is only one employee. So for example, I think that would be helpful to visualize in one spreadsheet this, to see exactly where, if we can come on an agreement where we want to start, if the council want to start implementing the results of the study. I don't know if there's any question of what I just said.
Okay, yeah, we can certainly do that. That information is in the draft report, but I can consolidate that into one sheet if you'd like.
Great, thank you.
Councilman Palermo.
Thank you. So yeah, I think Councilman Zapata brings up a good suggestion, because I think this does deserve a little more focus and targeting, and that's really what I want to see. So I am certainly supportive of increasing some salaries, and at the same time, I think it really needs to be done strategically and targeted, because at the end of the day, what I'm hearing from finance is there's the funding available, so technically, we have enough money. At the same time, again, there's a lot of really projects and services that our residents want to see, and what I'm certainly not hearing is if we have enough to do all the projects our residents want, as well as give this just this complete overhaul. And I think the way I'd want to see it is as we look at the different groups, targeted different areas, where is there that biggest need, where do we have the biggest risk, et cetera. And that's how I'd like to see approaching it. Similar to I know we've had multiple discussions about the police department, but again, the police department, I think, was a great example for 3 different reasons. One, there was no other department in the city that has had as much pay compression when you look at different roles and different levels of responsibility. Number 2, there's no department within the whole city that had as many vacancies and long-term vacancies. If you look at just that total vacancy count, and again, so proud of our team for really improving that number, but still I want to see it get down to 0, and I appreciate council's support in that recent meeting. And then third as well, just dealing with turnover, and that's something where I want to just definitely see and understand where we really have those gaps that have been hurting us across the city, and make sure that we really target where our support is. So So that's what I'd kind of like to see. And again, just the more data, the better, so that we have a more targeted, surgical type approach. And I think the data that Councilman Zapata has brought up would be really helpful in that direction.
I will say, if I may respond real quick, on the issue of pay compression, and certainly when you target certain pay range or certain pay grades and only address those, that does create compression. For instance, if we were only to raise police officers but not raise sergeants in your example, or just raise sergeants, not raise lieutenants, or throughout the city, not just the police department. If you do it that way, where you just target certain pay grades, again, there is the danger of creating compression.
Mayor Henry.
Thank you, Jim, for an excellent presentation. And what I would like to reiterate is that we have hired a firm to come in and do a compression study, a comp study. They know what they're doing. They do this for a living. We've got professionals in HR that know what they're doing. They do this for a living. And frankly, it scares me when elected officials want to go in and laser target and focus on raises for certain segments of our staff and not raises for others. What I would highly suggest is, number one, every council member was provided with a copy of the comp study. And I would encourage you all to read it. I would encourage you all to understand it. I would encourage you all to ask our staff questions about it. But for us to come in at this point and determine this person gets a raise, this one doesn't, we don't care about compression here, we do care about it here. And I will also go on to say that our chief of police has been put in a horrible position because this council decided to give him $100,000. He has chosen not to do anything with that money. He has chosen to tell his rank and file that they will see a raise when we implement this compression study or this comp study, and not anytime sooner. So I would like to caution this council on getting in the weeds and over involvement in this. I understand that you have agendas. You have people that you want to see get raises. You have people that you don't. That's human nature. I get it. But we've got over 600 employees. We are a city government. We are a professional government that needs to take care of not only our employees, but the city of Roswell. And when we get in the weeds and start meddling in these types of issues, I would just suggest to you, don't adopt it. Don't adopt it. Ignore the professionals, ignore the contracts that we have put in place to provide us with information. Just ignore it. And let's see where that gets us. It's going to get us down the road of being 9% under the median. And it's going to get worse. And just as Mr. Hunter said, you're creating compression by cherry picking departments and positions that you want to see improved. So I would suggest that we re-examine our roles as elected officials and look at this in a professional manner.
Councilor Zapata.
Thank you. So, say that we are talking about this because we have an agenda or whatever, and he said, I get it. Let me tell you, you don't get it. This means that you don't know all of us. You don't know the background of all of us. You don't know our business experience of all of us. You don't know the idea of trying to save as much money to taxpayers as possible, to be the most effective and efficient. So accusing us that we need to read because we don't know and all those things that you are saying, that is not correct. Let me, make a point here. So, nothing wrong to look into this. We all have fiduciary responsibilities here of taxpayers' money. So trying to disengage and discourage this council to have an opinion on the salaries and the study and all this in an analytical base, that is not correct. So let me make this point. So, so nothing wrong to analyze and see where we make a recommendation and then we vote. And then if it pass, if it doesn't, in a democratic way. So just here being rubber stamping, some of us, we're not here for that. So some of us have professional and educational background to look at certain things. So I was really offended by your comment, the two comments you made, and would I get it? No, you don't get it.
Councilor Blumenauer.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd say to echo Councilman Zapata's points, I wouldn't say I'm offended, but I am disappointed. I feel this should be a healthy public discussion that we absolutely should be having, and something that we should be getting public input for as well. At the end of the day, first of all, you know, our police officers, the amount of risk that they've been taking on, the hard work they've been having, I think they deserve a raise immediately. And it's really disappointing to hear that some money was allocated, $100,000 for less than a 6-month period, to really correct some salaries. And I just really hope that we can be curing that retention issue that we've had to make sure that we're really having the absolute best officers, and to make sure we're retaining them. So in general, though, across the whole city, yes, of course, I would love to just go ahead and say, you know what, let's just implement the entire study. What I haven't heard is, I saw Mr. Luckett provided the costs up until I forget if it was fiscal year, which one it was, where it shows that full impact. What I'm not sure is if the net present value of the increases was provided, or if it was just the annual amounts for those upcoming years.
It was the annual amounts for those years.
Okay. Because I think at the end of the day, yes, we have the ideal. If we've got unlimited money, or we've actually just bought everything that our taxpayers want us to do, then there's no question. Let's go ahead and implement it immediately. But I heard it was said that there's an agenda. My agenda is to make sure that we're completely fiscally responsible with taxpayer money. And in doing that, I think we need to be more targeted. And instead of just doing our absolute just dream of having that many millions, which again, I definitely want to see the net present value of the amount proposed. And we need to make sure that we understand that what we're doing, and really what we're not doing by these decisions. Because again, my biggest focus is to make sure that we're efficient with the budget. And with that, I think there's a number of different areas where we probably are at risk, just like we've been at risk for a long time with the police department. I'm sure there's other areas as well. I want to address those risks. I want to make sure residents are getting the absolute top service they can, and that also involves investing in projects, in infrastructure, et cetera. And we need to look at this holistically as a part of the total budget in making our decisions.
Councilor Hall.
Thank you, Gary, and thank you everybody for the discussion. I have been involved and have engaged firms to do compensation studies. I am familiar with the process and how it works. And often when you do that, you also find that you need to redo your job descriptions, because it's not just the levels and the compensation levels. And I agree, if we're behind 9%, we need to adjust that. But it often goes beyond that, because what you'll find is that people are classed incorrectly, and you want to be fair and make sure that people are ultimately classed correctly. And what I heard, what the consultants did, and this is what they do, is they ask people what they do, and they make assumptions based on what they're describing as their tasks. And the consultants may not know that in the entire scope of your organization. So I was just wondering if there were some new job descriptions, or are we looking at that, and how that was, how that played into this with this study?
Yes, ma'am. That was part of the internal focus. There was really 3 levels of that. Again, the individual employee says, this is what I do, and there's a scoring attached to that based on those compensable factors: education, safety, impact of decisions, how wide and far-reaching, and this person makes a decision in their job. So there's an actual scoring system on that. In addition, because of that, some revisions, not major ones, but some tweaking of job descriptions were recommended. Oh, and by the way, there is like I said, a check and balance on that. The supervisor can say, wait a minute, Jim says he does this. I've never seen him do that. Scratch that, So there's that check and balance. And then the HR department looks at the final product of the job description and says, yeah, this is our understanding of this. And then, to your point, Councilmember Hall, then those are slotted into our pay grades. And that's part of that internal equity I was mentioning, to make sure that relevant to this position, this is where this one should be. And then you added that the external analysis, which again is with the market. So both of those phases were done in this study. And so, yes, ma'am.
Mayor Henry.
What I would like to reiterate is that, and I believe that Jim Harner just said this very well, which is our staff is constantly looking at this. They're reclassifying employees on a regular basis. This is an ongoing discussion that is had by our professionals on a regular basis. The compensation study, for lack of a better term, we contracted out for that to compare with sister cities, with comparable other governments that compete for our employees. So please don't assume that because we went out for a compensation study that our employees are not doing their job and they're not on top of this.
Any further questions or comments? Councilmember Judy.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that when I was elected, I didn't all of a sudden become a HR specialist or a comp study specialist or financial specialist or a ComDev specialist or transportation specialist. I do have a background in certain things, as Councilmember Zapata said, but I also have to take to heart what those who work every day in this say. I did have a conversation with the chief the other day regarding this study, and $100,000 was not even going to come close to helping the situation at this point in time. So based upon that, I tend to take the approach of the experts who have taken in the information from the staff and do this for a living, and then make a decision whether we're going to spend the money or not. So I think that's where we are here. Are we going to spend the money for I can't question, because I don't have the expertise in this. I don't think anybody else on here does. I don't know if anybody does compensation studies for a living, but I can't question what came back to us. What I can question is do we need to spend the money in the ways it was given to us by our HR, finance, and experts that we hired to do this? I think that we got to be careful of becoming experts in everything after elections.
Any further questions or comments from the council? What is the pleasure of the council?
I have a motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Councilmember Judy. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Wilsey. Any further questions or comments? Councilmember Palermo.
Again, I want to be very clear that I certainly support looking at at specific groups, whether they were at risk from a COVID standpoint in the work that they're doing for our residents, or they're at risk from a standpoint of challenges we've seen with the police department around retention, around vacancies, et cetera. And so I'm fully supportive of working together with this council and really being strategic in how we use the tax dollars. But what I'm not supportive in doing is just an across the board, that large amount of money. We haven't even discussed, Mr. Lucky has not provided us the net present value of what this amount is, the impact to other city services or city projects that will not be able to be moved forward, given the expense across the board. So again, I really hope we have the opportunity to work and find the areas that have the most need and urgently address those. But again, just to not even discuss this further and not even think about it, and is something I certainly fully oppose today.
Any other questions or comments from the council? All in favor, please raise your hands. And it passes 4-2. Thank you. We're going to take a 5-minute recess. We'll be back at 6:15. Thank you all. Welcome back. The next item on the agenda, we're moving to the Finance Committee, is consideration to revise and update the City of Roswell investment policy. Mr. Luckett, I believe.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I know you all got to hear about the exciting world of the film industry earlier, and now we're going to talk about the exciting world of investments. So I know you're all ready for that. So as you know, the City of Roswell does have an investment program where we seek to maximize the funds that the city has on hand to earn a competitive rate of return while also maintaining the safety of those funds and making sure that we are compliant with all state and local laws. One of the things that kind of helps us help guide that program is the city's investment policy. The city has maintained an investment policy since 1995. There have been a few revisions over the years. And as you know, also, you all approved hiring an investment advisory firm, PFM Asset Management. And I wanted to introduce two members of their team that are with us tonight. Scott Stitcher is a director with PFM, and Sean Gannon is a senior analyst at PFM. And we've been working with them over the last month or so to kind of transition into having them manage a portion of our portfolio. And I'll turn it over to them in just a moment, and they'll talk a little bit about some of the recommendations they have. But part of their scope of work was to go in and look at our investment policy and to make some recommendations if they saw the need for them. They have come back with several recommendations. So you have a copy in your packet of our current investment policy, as well as a red line version that incorporates the recommended changes that we've come up with. I'll tell you that I'll cover kind of the key changes that our investment advisory firm is recommending. There were some other changes, basically like wording changes, clarification, some restructuring, but it kind of all boils down to really 5 different changes that we wanted to go over with you tonight. One being that just in comparing our policy with what's recommended from some of our professional organizations, there were 2 sections that we are recommended to add, a glossary as well as an investment pool questionnaire. Additionally, the recommendation is to establish some clear short-term and long-term benchmarks to measure the performance of our portfolio in a better way. They're also recommending to clarify our policy in terms of allowable investments to specifically allow or specifically state that agency mortgage-backed securities are allowed, which were already in our current policy, but kind of needed some clarification in our updated one. Additionally, recommendation is to change what we currently have now as an average maturity limitation of 3 years on the overall portfolio, and changing that to a 3-year duration, as well as slightly increasing the maximum maturity of an individual investment to 5.5 years from the current 5-year limitation. Also, the final big recommended change would be to expand the policy to allow for single A rated municipal obligations, and that would be in Georgia, state of Georgia, other state governments, that we could invest in those obligations that have at least a single A rating. Currently, our policy has a limitation of a AA, but our investment advisors think that expanding that to include single A's would help to increase the pool of opportunity for the city. So those are some of the key changes that they're recommending. I also wanted just to briefly mention kind of what's really staying intact. And the biggest part of that is, the overall objectives of our investment program. We're still, our objectives priority is to maintain the safety of the funds that we are holding, making sure that we're compliant with state and local laws, that we're maintaining adequate liquidity to meet the needs of the city. And then the final objective being, we want to see a competitive rate of return on those investments. The listing, our current policy lists what's authorized in terms of permitted investments. That stays exactly the same with one exception, and that exception was to include one additional type of investment that is allowed in our state law, but that wasn't in our investment policy. Also, our reporting requirements to City Council, that's in our policy now, that stays the same. You know, direction to make sure that we are implementing internal controls to prevent any kind of loss of funds or anything like that. That was in our current policy, that's staying the same. And then using benchmarks to track the performance of our overall portfolio. So those are the things, those big questions, you know, that are really staying the same when you can look at our current policy compared to the recommendation. So with that, I'll turn it over to Scott and Sean, and they wanted to just give you a little bit more information on some of the recommendations they have and what they saw as they kind of reviewed the city's policy.
Thank you, Ryan. Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's nice to meet you. It's nice to be here with you this evening. We appreciate the opportunity to spend time with you. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Ryan and Georgette McCrae for all their help. One of the things I think they've learned in hiring an investment manager is it's not a flip the switch sort of scenario. There are a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of heavy lifting that takes place, and they've been great partners with us so far in taking those steps to strengthen and enhance the city's investment program. So a big thank you to Ryan and Georgette. So one of the items and one of the steps in that process is, you know, reviewing the investment policy and looking at areas where we think you can take steps to update it and bring it more in line with industry standards. Let me step back quickly and just first of all commend you all for having an investment policy in place, and one that's very well written at that. We have, you know, started relationships with other entities that actually do not have an investment policy in place, where we're starting with a blank slate. So again, I commend you all for having a policy in place, and the fact that we're taking these steps to review and look at the policy is not a black eye on part of the city at all. It's just it's something that we recommend that you do on an annual basis. So today we're going to talk a little bit more about what that really means to say, look at bringing something in line with industry standards. I'm going to let my partner, Sean Gannon, talk a little bit about what that means specifically. And I'll just also give him a shout out and mention that he actually just recently was promoted to senior managing consultant. So he's no longer senior analyst. So I'll just throw that out there as well as I hand it over to Sean.
Thank you, Scott. It was a pleasure to meet you all. So just to dive right in, when talking about industry standards, we want to make sure that you know that we're not coming in and just picking random things here and there to build your investment policy or enhance your investment policy. We base it off of three, I guess, sets of guidelines. The first and the primary one being Georgia State Code. We want to make sure that above all else, your policy is in compliance with any legal restrictions or direction provided by Georgia State Code. The other two are more industry best practices, industry guidelines. The first being GFOA, which is the Government Finance Officers Association. They put out a sample investment policy, what you should look like, what it should gear towards, and goals it should reach, as well as the Association of Public Treasurers, United States and Canada. They do the same thing, where you can actually go and apply for an industry best practices type of investment policy, and they'll sit there, they'll review it and say, yes, City of Roswell has this, they don't have this, et cetera, and come back to you with feedback. So, you know, if you all wanted to go that direction, you could actually apply for their certification program and get a little plaque in their office there saying that you have a great investment policy. You know, all this to say that we take into account a lot of different factors in building your investment policy. And to Scott's point earlier, and to your all's credit, you had almost everything there was to have in your policy. You see a lot of red lines, a lot of strike throughs in this policy. That I want to say that's more of kind of a verbiage switch, maybe some clarifying language. A lot of what was in there already is still in there, just maybe with some different language. So with that, I'll hand it back over to Scott or
Yep.
Ryan.
Yep, thank you, Sean. So I think Ryan did an excellent job of providing a high-level overview of some of the enhancements that we suggested and are coming to you tonight for a first read and to hopefully get your blessing to move forward and implement. And like Sean said, it may look a little overwhelming right now because there's so much red on there, but a lot of it's semantics, a lot of it's more formatting. Hopefully our goal was really to put it in a more easy to read format so that when someone picks it up, it's a little bit easier to understand. So let me stop talking. Sean and I stop talking. Let us just turn it over to you to see what questions, thoughts, concerns that you might have.
Is there any questions from the committee members? Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here and presenting today. So you mentioned that some of the changes here in red are either to, I don't know, my question is, all these changes here are to comply with the Georgia legislation or to be more according with the industry standards, the language you are using now that you are suggesting to use here in red?
So the short answer is we're trying to do both, really. At the end of the day, first and foremost, it is to comply with Georgia state statutes, okay? So what we try to do is make sure that your policy includes all the necessary components of the statute. Now, with that said, I will say Georgia state statute is actually pretty light when looking compared to other states. So when we say we're trying to include the necessary components of Georgia state statute, it's really not all that difficult to do. But you were doing it, you are doing it. We're just kind of showing it in a different format. With that said, additionally, we do look to some of these other entities, these other organizations that Sean was speaking of, that are more, I'll say, watchdogs, or provide oversight or guidance on what industry best practices are and what your policy should look like and what are the important components that should be in the policy. So these go a little step further than what Georgia state statute is or says, and says, in addition to that, you should also have X, Y, and Z. X, Y, and Z, language about having a third-party custodian, language about getting multiple bids when buying a security, language about internal controls. I think Ryan mentioned the fact that it's important to have internal controls in place. So those organizations take it again a step further and talk about some of the important elements that should be included in one's investment policy. And as Sean alluded to, the Association of Public Treasurers of the United States and Canada, they even offer a service where you can send your policy in for another set of eyes on it, pay a small fee, have them review it and certify that your policy includes all the necessary components of a well-written, thoughtful, comprehensive investment policy. So I hope that answers your question.
Great. Yes. Thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Is there any other questions from any committee members? I don't see any other questions. So, Mr. Luckett, you're looking for approval of the revisions of the investment policy?
Yes.
Do I have a motion? I have a
Motion to approve.
A motion from Councilmember Judy to approve. I have a second. Councilmember Wilsey. I have a motion and a second. All in favor of these revisions, raise your hand. And that is unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you all for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Our pleasure.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Next item on the agenda is item number 7, the presentation of the FY 2021 second quarter budget Initiative Progress Report, and I think Ms. Hoare is probably going to be handling that.
Yes. Thank you, Michael. Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. I'm here today to present the second quarter budget initiative progress report. And in this report, each quarter, we give you an update on some of the major initiatives that were approved by you all as part of the budget process. So I'll start off with the, oh, sorry, I'm not sharing my screen. Do you all see my slides?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, good. So I'll start off with the administration department. There are a total of 7 initiatives here that we are reporting on. And of them, 6 of them are progressing as planned and 1 is complete or substantially complete. And this slide lists out the projects, those 7 projects that I'm talking about. And most of these projects, as you can see, are progressing as planned, and the citywide network and fiber switch replacement project is almost complete. And then we have community development. There are a total of 4 initiatives that we have been reporting on, and all 4 of them are progressing as planned. And these are the 4 projects here listed here. And then in EPW, we have a total of 14 initiatives across the 4 funds within the department. And of those 14 initiatives, 13 are progressing as planned and 1 is complete. And now we'll go through each one of the funds. So in solid waste, we have a total of 4 projects. All of them are progressing as planned. And then in stormwater, we have the 1 major stormwater master project list where all the funding is. And then within that, there are several projects that the department has been working on. And as you can see, most of them have been completed, and there is 1 that is progressing as planned. And then with within the water fund, we have 7 projects that we have been reporting on, and all of them are progressing as planned currently. And then within the fleet fund, there were 2 projects. One of those, the on-site parts store project, that has been completed, and the citywide vehicle leasing program, since that's an ongoing program, that is progressing as planned. And then in the fire department, we have a total of 8 initiatives. Of those, 7 are progressing as planned and 1 has been completed. And these are the list of projects that we are reporting on, and you'll find the details on all of these projects in your packets. And then the police department, there are a total of 4 initiatives. 3 of them are progressing as planned and 1 has been delayed. And the delayed project is the 911 Emergency Communications Center, the design portion of that. And then in Recreation and Parks Department, we have a total of 13 initiatives here. 1 has been completed, 11 are progressing as planned, and then there is 1 project that has been delayed. And this slide gives you the list of projects. And that's the second one. And then finally, we have the Transportation Department, which has a total of 15 initiatives that we have been reporting on. And 8 of them are progressing as planned, and 7 of them have been delayed, either short-term or long-term. And these next 2 slides here give you the list of those projects here. And just to mention finally, so this is the end of my slides, and just to mention that these projects that you see in this particular report, they include the funding that was approved as part of the first quarter. What was approved at the mid-year budget amendment is not included in here. That will be part of the third quarter report when that is presented to you later. That is all I have today.
Thank you, Ms. Hoare, for the presentation. Is there any questions or comments from Ms. Hoare? Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you. Great. Yeah, I mean, it's a nice detail. Is any possibility in the future to add estimated initiation and completion date? Do you have this information? on the finance department, or is something that you will have to collect from every single department in terms of estimated initiation and completion date?
That is actually information that we do collect from the department, council member. And actually, if you look at the Word document that is part of your packet, you should see in there the start date and the estimated completion date for each project. It is included in that packet.
But
no, not on this. No, sir, not in the presentation, but the Word document.
But no, my point is, can you add in your presentation in the future?
Oh, yes. Yeah, definitely. I can do that.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? All right, thank you, Harpreet. We'll move on to item number 8.
Thank you.
Which is the presentation of the FY 2021 second quarter budget report. And Mr. Luckett, I'll turn that over to you.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and share my screen here. Everyone see that okay?
Yes, thank you.
So this is the presentation of our second quarter budget report. We talked about a lot of this at the mid-year budget amendment, so I won't, I'll try to get through it pretty quickly. And just to let you know, so this reflects the budget that you see here is reflective of the changes that were made at the first quarter, but not the changes that were made in mid-year. So this report goes through December, and as we know, the budget amendment for mid-year was approved a couple of weeks ago. So you'll see that in the next report. So we start off our report with just a kind of a brief overview memo to kind of give you an idea of where we're at. But to get into the actual funds, so we'll start with our general fund. So as you can see, overall, we had projected through December revenues of $50.2 million. We have year-to-date revenues actuals of $58.2. On the expenditure side, we had projected to spend $39.9 million through December, and we have actual expenditures of $36.8 million. Just to kind of get into a little more detail within the general fund. So as you can see, this top box here gives you some more detail on our revenues. So overall, we have a positive revenue variance through December of about $8 million. That's primarily consists of the $4 million that came through the CARES reimbursement funds. So that's the $4 million that you see here. And then just the sales tax and business taxes that have come in higher than expected in the original budget. The next table here gives you some more details on our expenditures. So you can see through December, like I said, we had projected $39.9 million. We've actually spent $36.8, which gives us a positive variance of 3.1, the bulk of that being within our operating funds. And then at the bottom, it gives you an overview by department to show you kind of where each department is spending in terms of expenditures. Next, we have our water and sewer fund. So you can see here that our revenues, our actual revenues are slightly higher than our projections through December, and our expenditures through December are below our projections by just under $1 million. In our solid waste fund, we have projected revenues of 5.7, and we've actually collected about 5.8. On the expenditure side, we are well below the projections, coming in at 4.4 with a projection of 5.6. On the stormwater fund, again, our revenues are slightly above our projections at 1.7 million, and our expenditures in the stormwater fund are just below our projections, coming in at 1.7 million also through the month of December. The Recreation Participation Fund, again, we spoke a little bit more in detail about this during the mid-year budget. Revenues through December were projected at 2.6. We've collected about 2.4. On the expenditure side, we had projected 3 million. Our actual revenues have come in about 2.5 million. And as you know, there was some additional funding approved in the mid-year to help this fund, help shore this fund up a little bit because of the effects this fund is feeling from COVID and the lack of programming. In our hotel motel fund, again, we're seeing those effects of COVID here with our hotel industry. So our revenues were projected at $546,000 during the approved budget through December. They've come in at $333,000 so far. Our expenditures were projected at $462,000, and our actual expenditures through December were $366,000. In our E911 fund, our revenues and expenditures are pretty much on target. Our actuals are slightly below on the revenue side, our projections. And then on the expenditure side, you can see also our expenditures are coming in just under our projections. And then finally, the last page of our report just gives you a synopsis of the general fund here at the top, and then all of the city funds that are exist, and kind of how those are performing through the first half of the fiscal year. So that concludes our report, and I'll be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Thanks, Ryan. Any questions from anybody on the second quarter budget report? All right, good job. Item number 9, consideration of a resolution to authorize the mayor to execute all the documents for a Georgia Environmental Finance Authority loan to finance the construction of the new solid waste transfer station we recently heard about. So Ryan, I will turn that back over Georgette, maybe one or the other.
Thank you, Michael. Good evening, Mayor and Council. As a part of the FY21 budget, Mayor and Council approved the construction of the new transfer station. On July 27th, Mayor and Council approved the submission of a loan application to the Georgia Environmental Finance Authority to finance the construction of the new facility. The GFA board approved the loan application in November, and staff is requesting approval to execute all loan documents. GFA would provide financing in the amount of $3 million at an interest rate of 1.63% for a term of 20 years. But the city will receive a 1% discount due to the city's certification as a water first community. So the interest will be 0.63%, which results in interest savings for the city of more than $300,000 over the life of the loan. I will take any questions if you have any.
Motion to approve.
That is amazing. We have a motion to approve.
Awesome.
And I have a couple of seconds, a second, I guess, from Councilmember Judy to start with, but thank you all for that. Any other discussion on this item? Councilmember Zapata, is that a comment?
Yes, yes, a question.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks. Is any penalty to cancel early the loan, or early cancellation penalty here, or not? But you can cancel the loan anytime you want in the future.
We'll verify that. I don't believe there is one, but we'll double check that and get back to you on that.
Thank you.
Thanks. I have a motion and a second to approve this loan. All in favor, raise your hand. And that is unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. McRae.
Thank you, Michael.
I think that does it for finance. So we'll move over to recreation and parks. Item number 10 is notification of emergency procurement for the Roswell area park pool. I see Mr. Leatherman.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is a notification that we did activate under Mr. Palmer's signature, the need for an emergency repair to a leak in the pool. The dollar figure was about $5,000. We're just finishing up the work on that, and it is covered in our operating budget, but since we needed to do it through an emergency contract, there is a notification requirement to come to committee, which is the reason for this item tonight. There isn't any action that's necessary unless there's any questions. It's just a notification item for that emergency procurement.
Is there any questions for Mr. Leatherman regarding this? It's a policy that we have to follow to bring this notification to you.
Yeah, thank you for bringing the notification.
Sure. No questions on that. So thank you, Mr. Leatherman, for that. We'll move on to item number 11. It's a consideration to approve a memorandum of understanding between the City of Roswell and the Roswell Alpharetta Mountain Biking Association, Inc. Mr. Leatherman.
This is an agreement between the City of Roswell and Rambo. They have been a partner with us for many, many years, really the last decade, on assisting to build and maintain various trail assets in Big Creek Park, primarily the mountain biking trails and pedestrian walking trails that are dirt and compacted dirt in nature, with some improvements of wooden bridges and other items. We've had an agreement off and on. It has since expired, and we've been working over the last probably about 6 months or so, working out the details of the agreement to make sure that we have one in place with Rambo. Functionally, the language of the agreement is really just brought up to the new standards that we're using in our existing MOUs from the most recent one. Includes the liability language that we've had in place for some time, and really outlines the roles and responsibilities of Rambo and what they're committing to and assisting the city, and how the city and Rambo will be working together over the next year. It does extend over the course of the next 3 years from time to time, and both parties have the option to relook at this agreement on an annualized basis or give notice to cancel the agreement as well. The details are in your packet. Be happy to answer any specific questions on the MOU if necessary.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion from Councilmember Zapata to approve this MOU. I have a second by Councilmember Judy. Is there any other comments or questions? If not, all in favor, raise your hand. And that is unanimous, so that is approved. Thank you. Item number 12, consideration for the mayor and/or city administrator to award contracts to Intercontinental Commercial Services, Inc. and American Facility Services, Inc. for the janitorial services in an amount not to exceed $168,000. Mr. Leatherman.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. As Mayor and Council may recall, in Q1, you approved janitorial services for our first 6 facilities that are listed in the staff report. And really, these are our high traffic facilities where we're working to bring in a night cleaning service as we close down the buildings to refresh those buildings, start the buildings fresh in the morning. We did proceed through the procurement process with the assistance of our finance and purchasing department. The procurement memo is included in the packet based on the recommendation, and we are recommending the approval of this contract and moving it forward to Mayor and Council. Your next meeting.
Motion to approve.
Motion from Councilmember Zapata for approval. Do I have a second? Second from Councilmember Judy. Is there any questions regarding this item?
So,
yes, sir. Go ahead.
Quick question, Mr. Leatherman. So let me see here. Quick question. So what happened on the bidding? The number 1 was A Auction Inc., which was less expensive. Do you know what was disqualified on?
So we have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Page 12A of the packet.
Yeah, we had 9 firms that responded to the solicitation. There were 4 firms that were found non-responsive through the solicitation process. I was not on the committee that reviewed these. We can get that answer should you need it, and I can double check in the procurement memo. But generally, firms are found non-responsive for a variety of reasons, potentially incorrect information, incorrect bidding information, or didn't meet the standards of the bid.
Just see the A Action was the less expensive on the bid, but just curious to know what happened to them. But yeah, I don't need the answer right this minute, but
we can get that for you before this comes to council.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Palermo.
Yeah, so I will support staff's recommendation today. I will definitely want to see the details and just understand what made them not responsive, knowing that they were a lower cost bidder for the taxpayers. But again, today I'm ready to move forward, and I'll certainly support it council unless any concerns based on the new information.
All right, thank you. I think Mr. Leatherman can get that to you in time for the committee meeting or the council meeting.
Okay, so with that, I'll motion to approve.
I think we got the motion in second. We'll go ahead. I'll ask for a vote. How about that? All in favor, raise your hand. All right, that's unanimous. So thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. Thank you, Jeff.
You bet. Thank you.
I've got other items. Item number 13. This is an item that was brought forth from Councilmember Palermo, and it's regarding a statement of intent to update the ethics code to clearly identify situations to avoid the appearance of impropriety when council members vote on zoning applications that directly profit their campaign donors. So I will turn that over to Councilor Palermo if you'd like to open up with any discussion.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Fisher, and I will want the screen shared of the of one of the packet pages, but to start out, want to give a just a real high level. So again, this is something where we already have with, and actually let's go ahead and actually open up the if we can share the packet.
We have to have that electronically already open, Councilor Palermo. We don't have that, what I'm seeing, we don't have that in there to be able to share the packet page on the screen.
Okay, is it possible for me to share my screen?
If you have it opened up electronically, yes, sir. If you, are you up in your office now?
I am.
Could you see if you can? What you'll need to do is just open that document up to that page, minimize the document, and then go to the share the screen button. And I think an IT individual is on his way as we speak. But if you can have that page open, then you just minimize it. Then when you hit share screen, it'll give you that as an option. Oh, you did it.
Excellent.
Look at you.
Yeah.
All right.
Pre-COVID, I wouldn't have been able to do this. So,
good job.
I've learned a lot the last year. I've got it. Thank you. Excellent. So just really as a high level, again, what the purpose of this is, that within our ethics code, there's something that already states that, of course, we should all avoid impropriety, and it specifically mentions even the appearance of impropriety. And when talking with different attorneys about this this kind of just this idea, you know, one of them had actually brought up, it was actually an attorney that's focused on the First Amendment. He had actually brought up that that's actually very common, even in legal practices and many different practices, that it always focuses on not just avoiding impropriety, but avoiding even the appearance of impropriety. And so with that, what's came up is, again, where this came from was residents emailing into mayor and council, just our official email. This was years ago. And what was interesting is there was a project where council members had received campaign donations from the developer, and them bringing up that they felt that was the reason it was being approved. That was their perception. But then, interestingly enough, there was another development that was approved where I saw some similar type emails, when in reality, I don't believe that was the case. So I think so therefore, that was where kind of my thought process is. I feel we really can really instill some trust and rebuild some trust, and really give more faith in the whole process if we do just really clarify our code here. And so this really, I want to stress too, this is not about looking backwards. This is not looking in the past. This is purely looking forward. And with that, actually, I want to praise Councilman Judy. Last night, he chose. It was not a requirement. He absolutely just chose last night to recuse himself from a zoning application, and it was based on having received a campaign contribution from one of those that profit from it. And again, you know, I think it was actually a great example last night to show that I do believe this can work smoothly. You know, if we look at last night as an example, there were many votes. There were many votes in many different departments. There were many votes within community development, and there was just one that had a recusal. And I felt it went pretty smoothly. And again, I think we'll go a long way in really just giving residents the confidence that their voice is equal to others, and the fact that decisions are being made purely around the best of the city. A couple things I want to stress as well is, at all times when thinking about this, my focus was making sure, of course, every application and every applicant always deserves a quorum. So there's logic in here that takes that into account. It absolutely is important that anyone has the right to donate to a candidate or a council member's campaign. And of course, any candidate or council member always has the right to choose to either accept or deny a campaign contribution. So it's important that I wanted all that to be very clear in the intent. Also, what this is purely focused on as well is purely a specific zoning application where, in other words, not zoning legislation. So if someone takes money from a, you know, from someone that profits from say a certain type of development, that is not restricting this proposed here is not restricting anybody from certainly fully voting on all the legislation. This is purely focused when there's a zoning application. And then a key to stress as well is knowingly. You know, the intent is really making sure that this is something that really can be, you know, realistic and implemented. So it is just when it's known. And so those are the aspects of the intent. And just something else I wanted to mention as well is really comes down to just really my thought process and where this started. Again, you know, we can get into the technical details of just, you know, what's the best way to have an ordinance, a resolution, et cetera, but really just want to focus on, this is something that I really would love to see us just be collaborative on, and that was certainly my effort. So it's just a matter of really, you know, would you support, you know, recusing ourselves from voting on zoning applications if we have knowingly received financial contributions from someone profiting from the application. So it's really, that was ultimately the goal. And I do realize there was not majority support for this. And so with that, that's where I started working on my really drafting something myself, and with you know, input from reaching out to different attorneys and different people that specialize in this type of stuff. But so basically that's where I got a petition, just raising awareness, making sure that this was something that a number of residents were supporting, which I do feel a number do. But lastly, what I want to do is talk through the process on what I'm laying out. Again, knowing that there's opposition, my goal is not right now to pass an ordinance update. My goal is to really lead by example. And again, actually, I feel Councilman Judy did a great job last night of leading by example and just showing that it can work. So what I'm proposing, and what I think makes a lot of sense, is doing a voluntary resolution, a voluntary statement of intent, just to show that those of us within the mayor and council that are willing to support this will voluntarily do it. And my hope is that after showing a year of following this, and it shows that it's really not difficult, not unreasonable, and actually really something I think beneficial for our community, that then in supporting the statement of intent and supporting this resolution, agreeing that we would support really passing this, or I guess I should say voting for approval of this next year to make it a true part of our ethics code. So there's the resolution, the statement of intent, and again, why am I doing it? Because I really want to show what I feel is some compromise, and show something where let's have it be completely voluntary for a year. And again, my hope is after that, there's a lot more that just sees, you know what, this really is something that made sense and gives a chance to rebuild trust with the community. So the one thing I want to clarify, and the one reason my actual preference and plan is to not ask for a vote on this tonight, is because it was brought to my attention there is one aspect that should be reworded. And so basically, when the backup materials were due, you know, last week, week and a half ago, whenever it was, what everybody sees is what I had, but the feedback that I'd received was specifically in clarifying professionals involved with such applications, and that's going to be updated, and for a very specific reason, because the goal and the intent is just when it's individuals that are clearly and knowingly, and again, knowingly is a key word, profiting off the zoning decision, and the way that it's written here, not everybody here necessarily profits off it, and so that's where I plan on having just some more clear language to include that. But what I'd love to do now is really just walk through any questions that anybody has, any concerns, just anything that we can discuss. Again, just really wanting to meet the goal of doing something that I feel is going to create a better relationship with the community, with residents, whenever they are watching. different zoning applications. And again, I think last night was a great example that that the city can still move, can still do the business we need to do. And of course, and that's not to say last night was the first recusal that's occurred. I think it is the first recusal that I've seen probably in the last 3 years or so, but I know there's certainly been recusals probably in my first year or so. And in fact, I know in looking through minutes of older meetings, they certainly have occurred in the past as well. So again, I just think it's something that's healthy for the community, and something that really will just hopefully increase trust and create a great opportunity for residents and developers and council members and everyone to really work together. So with that, I'll stop sharing my screen and really just any questions that you have, any concerns, and again, I know this is something that there is opposition, but knowing that what I'm proposing right now is we start with the voluntary resolution that shows intent. But again, just anything we can address, or frankly, if anyone that either supports this or opposes this has any advice on how we make it even better, then I certainly would love to hear that. Again, just knowing that I certainly want to make sure it's nothing that waters down the intent.
Thank you, Councilmember Palermo. I know you
Oh, there it is. Sorry.
put a lot of thought into this. I appreciate that. Just from a standpoint of leadership and example, I also want to appreciate Mayor Henry for recusing herself last night also, as she stepped out at the beginning of that item. So that I think it shows a lot of leadership of the mayor or council members in particular that want to step down for that very reason. So much appreciative of that. And I think tonight, I guess with you putting this out there and letting everybody take a look at it, is there anything that anybody has to add or to share in looking at this as we try to think about maybe a voluntary standpoint for the intent? To start with, this Councilmember Palermo has brought up, and I'll open up with Councilmember Zapata and then Councilmember after that.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. Councilmember Palermo, thank you so much for bringing forward this very important initiative that shows your leadership for open, transparent government, and it's a good example of that, and it's a good leadership of that. But my question is, in the last paragraph on the second page, say, this proposal only applies to situations where a council member knowingly accepts a campaign contribution from a contributor who will then profit from a zoning decision. My question is, so let's say during the campaign, the candidate received a contribution and then get elected, and a year later, whoever gave the money make a contribution is going to profit from a rezoning of a property. At the time that was given was not disclosed because was not the intention to do that. So this is what you mean by knowingly accept? Or what about if was accepted but nobody had the intention back then, but then all of a sudden, a week or 2 weeks before vote, this come out, then they will have to recuse? What is knowingly accept? I want to understand better the concept and the spirit behind these two words.
Sure. So the key there is what I'm proposing is the elected official has to knowingly, they have to know that they accepted a campaign contribution from someone that profited from it. And so basically it doesn't matter if they realized it and knew it, the day of the hearing or a year before the hearing. That doesn't make a difference. The question is, during the hearing, did they know that they received money from someone that's profiting off the project? So that's basically the intent there.
Great, thank you for the clarification.
Thank you, Councilmember Judy.
All right, where do I start here? I on the face of this, I think that it makes sense. the problem is the devil's in the details here. And where does this stop? This can get very slippery very quickly. Like you, I've talked to many citizens that believe this will silence their voices via basically vilifying them as profiting by donating to a council member that they believe is going to make the right decision for the city and not necessarily the right decision in their favor in all cases. And I've heard from state officials, I've heard from county officials, I've heard from other local officials. There is nowhere else in the state of Georgia that does this. And why is Roswell different? Are we corrupt? If there's corruption, I am all for let's find corruption and let's stamp it out right away. Where does this stop when we start talking about profiting from, and this is how I have problems with it written. And I too have spoken to multiple lawyers. And some have said this goes against the First Amendment, the case that's already been decided by the Supreme Court. And I know in writings that you've said that that's not the truth, but there again, let's talk about, every lawyer has a different opinion. And it's not what the lawyer decides, it's what the court decides and those justices decide. So this could be unconstitutional. We don't know. What I have a problem with is, where does profitability stop? Profiting, is it the landscaper? Is it the realtor? Is it the landowner as in last night? Is it the developer? Is it the builder? Is it the yard man? I don't know where this stops. It gets very, very slippery very, very quickly, the way this is written, A. B, we have state law already, which is Georgia Code 3667A1. And this code basically says on either side, on people that are for a project or against a project that have donated to a campaign, they must say that they donated to the campaign, for or against. And on the against side, it says that they must do it before basically PC, the first hearing, 5 days before PC. Over $250 in the last 2 years. And failure to do so is a misdemeanor. So I know in this city, if we start going down this road of following on the for side, which we do because in the application it states, have you donated, and they have to disclose. On the against side, so people will say, well, they're not profiting for that. Well, they might be, because they might feel a property down the street is going to hurt or help their property value. So let's give money to the candidate that's going to either support or deny this. So we get really slippery with that. Then we can get into boards and commissions, in which there are people who feel that there are some appointments to boards and commissions that have been donated. People have donated to campaigns. And those people will say, well, they're donating their time to the city. Yes, and I really appreciate that. But some are also potentially running for office from those seats and donating and supporting and have bonding abilities, such as the DDA, or semi-judicial, such as BZA. So we get into that. So as this is written tonight, I'm all for stamping out corruption. This is not written well because I think it's very muddy. I also think we have state law, federal law, and local law that makes people actually disclose this, so there's no impropriety unless you break those laws. And 3, if we're going to start picking at every single thing, I just don't know where this stops. Last night I recused myself. It was not a zoning hearing, it was a variance hearing. So I legally in all forms, even so that's another thing is the variance here in the zoning hearing, because technically and legally it's not. And the reason I recused myself last night is because of this item this evening, is where we can't be vilifying landowners in this city for potentially donating to a campaign of somebody that they've known for a long time and saying there's impropriety out there when there is not. So I have real problems with this. I think on the face, hey, look, let's stamp out corruption all day long. I'm all for it. Let's make sure. But just like you said on your side, you had a petition of 491 people. That's 0.005% of the population of the city. So, you know, we're gonna make a decision for 0.005%, because I can promise you on the other side, you say there's a lot of citizens who believe the way you do. I have a lot of citizens that believe this is stamping out and silencing their voice and causing them to be vilified for a reason that's not anywhere else in the state. So great discussion. Can't support this tonight. Would love to continue the discussion going forward, but those are my points on this.
I would like to respond to that. So a lot of good discussion right there. First of all, you're right. This is not something that's elsewhere in Georgia. And I see that as an incredible opportunity for us to be really proud to lead the way and make sure to really, you know, increase trust with the residents. So I see that as a incredible opportunity. And in fact, maybe some other municipalities or counties will actually want to follow our lead there. Something you mentioned with, you know, regarding for and against, you know, what if there's someone against that might live down the street and feels it's going to impact their property value, in which case they're profiting. A key here in the intent is clearly and directly profiting from, because I think what you mentioned, slippery slope, is it's a slippery slope for anyone to be making assumptions on maybe someone kind of profits, maybe they don't. Whereas in the goal of this is purely to be clearly and directly profiting. You mentioned that you're concerned this vilifies some people and making some people feel silenced, that if they want to have a zoning hearing, that they're not going to be able to have the council member they gave money to, you know, do their hearing. And you know what though, and because you said, you know, that person gave money to that council member because they felt they had the best vision for the city and we're going to do great things for the city. Well, here's the thing, that person that gave the money to that council member to get elected, that council member now has the opportunity to do many great things for the city, because there's so many more decisions for the city than just that one individual's zoning hearing. So even though this would encourage and ensure there's a recusal for that single zoning decision, it doesn't mean that there's not so many other great things for the city that the council member can do. Another thing that I want to address there is the fact that you mentioned, you know, where does it stop and all those aspects. You mentioned landscaper, realtor, et cetera. The key is if it's knowingly during the hearing. So for example, we unanimously supported at the Coles to turn into Pickle Social. Do any of us know who the landscaper at Pickle Social is going to be? I don't. So what I'm saying is, for all I know, there's some landscaper that gave to all 7 of us. But the key is we didn't know that at the hearing. It wasn't clear. Realistically, it's probably not even decided. But just the point is, if something's clear, if something is you know obvious and something that should be known, then it's knowingly. And key there as well. So Mr. Fisher, you brought up a completely accurate point. Mayor Henry, just like Councilman Judy did, decided to recuse themselves last night, which is fully in their right. And I think anyone that chooses to do a recusal, I think it is potentially just building some trust during that hearing. That being said, it was my understanding, if I heard the reasoning and the thought process was, I believe Councilman Judy's reason for recusing himself would follow the exact proposal that I have here. I believe, if I heard correctly, Mayor Henry had not received money from the applicant since or during the last election, in which case it would not be required under this. But again, that doesn't mean that council members or a mayor might not choose to go above and beyond at certain times they feel appropriate, which is I think a good thing. But again, you're right. I strongly believe that individuals are giving money to a council member that they feel is going to do the best decisions for the city. And that is a right that they deserve, and that's a right I'm proud to protect. But to say that just because that council member cannot then make a zoning decision on something they personally profit from on a specific zoning hearing, that is not what I think is right. And from a terminology standpoint, you're right. I keep on using the term zoning hearing. That's just the way I'm describing it. In reality, in this ordinance and in this statement of intent, it gets into the specifics, which are rezoning, variance, conditional use, and waiver of impact fees. And so basically, if there's something when someone individually is coming in front of council that they personally profit from, then I feel if one of us have taken money, basically the amount reported under Georgia law, which is above $100, then I think it's the right thing to do to recuse ourselves. And let's go to two different examples right there. We had one example last night where there were two recusals. And again, Councilman Judy, I think I'm glad you said you did it based on this proposal tonight. Again, you didn't have to, but again, I'm glad that it has you thinking about the residents. I think that's a good thing. And at the end of the day, knowing that you did not choose to vote on that one thing, you still had so many other votes you had the opportunity to contribute to. And then let's get into Pickle Social. Let's say the developer there had given you money and you made the same decision that you made for the Mr. Caldwell's property, and you chose to recuse yourself. At the end of the day, it was something where they still got a full hearing. There were still 6 other elected officials, and Pickle Social was unanimously approved last night. I strongly believe it should be okay to understand that if someone gives us money, we're not going to vote for their individual project. That's something important. And the last thing I'll mention that you brought up is volunteers. So with volunteers on different positions, then that's again something where I didn't get any emails on that the way I did during some projects that occurred back in 2019. I'd be more than happy to support and move forward and work together on updating how we determine volunteers to see if that's something we should change. I have a complete open mind. I want to work with all of you and find ways to how do we increase trust with the people of Roswell? How do we create a better relationship between the government and those that we're supposed to serve? And so I think this is doing it. You said, Councilman Judy, you're not supporting this tonight. You don't think it's well written. I think it's very well written, except for one part that I mentioned that does need to be improved. So what I'm going to do tonight, again, I'm not going to request a vote. What I'm going to do is by tomorrow afternoon, I'm going to email this mayor and council the updated language and give everybody therefore that month or whenever the next admin finance meeting is to really review. And again, I would love to get majority support on this. I think it is really beneficial for our community.
Thank you, Councilman Flavor. Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. Yeah, very interesting points. I would like to comment in 3 points probably. One, regarding where you stop in the landscaper or someone who is going to come and change a bulb in your garage or repair your garage door, where to stop. I have a solution. So if you use direct benefit from the zoning application on the rezoning or conditional use, direct benefit, because the landscaper, who knows? The one who's going to repair the garage door or install the new garage door, who knows? They don't benefit directly from this application, but
yeah, they do.
The landowner will benefit directly. The applicant / developer will benefit directly from this, but the one who is going to change the garage door, I don't see this benefiting directly from this. So I think if you use, Councilmember Palermo, the word direct benefit somehow in your language, in your proposal. I think that this will clarify this point. The second point about the board and commissions, I don't think that they should be profiting out of this position. And I guess that the intent of this is profiting, or Councilor Perez said profiting out of this. I hope that the members of the board and commissions are not using this as a step forward to profit out of that. I hope so, and I want to think about, and I want to believe on that. My third point regarding be the only one in Georgia. You know, I'm not afraid of innovation, not at all. I'm not a friend of leadership, not at all. Maybe, I guess Councilor Moreno said that maybe other cities will follow. That's fantastic if they want to also do that. But you know, something new that no other city is doing or not doing doesn't stop my sleeping. I can sleep by innovating and leading, and it's what I call the new Roswell way. You know, to lead and innovate on things and improve things on the city, on the legislation, on the operation, and everywhere else. So what I call the new Roswell way is that. So those 3 points I want to make. I found very interesting the discussion, and I think that Councilor Moreno, you are almost there, and I will be very excited to support the initiative. And then, and it's a lot of, you know, if someone wants to go beyond that with the variance recuse, that's fantastic. Doesn't prohibit this. I think this, what it does is give you a minimum standards for ethics. Yeah, this is related to ethics. So this gives you a minimum standards of ethics. So if you want to go beyond that, I applaud. I welcome this. Like I always said, you know, I don't sell one bottle of wine in the city of Roswell, and I'm fine, you know, with this. I can live with this, and you know, and it's my decision.
Yeah.
So, but that is my my standards of ethics. So, so in this way, I don't have to recuse. If the liquor application come in the city, I don't have to recuse. Is any legislation regarding this, the alcohol law in Roswell, I don't have to recuse. Because why? Because I don't sell nothing to non-store or restaurants in the city of Roswell. But that is my personal choice. I understand. We all have different choices. We all have different standards. And I think what this legislation is giving us, the people of Roswell, is the minimum standards. And then everybody can go beyond that if they feel that is the right thing to do. So I'm looking forward to see this again in the short term as a statement of intent or a piece of legislation, whatever Councilmember Palermo decide to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Zapata. Councilmember Wellesley.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Fisher. I mean, first of all, I just want to say that I came into this office and am still in this office with the highest expectation of the highest ethics and morals that are possible. And I expect those from all of my colleagues as well as myself. Since I've been in office, I've been very disappointed by some of the things that I've seen. I would welcome a discussion that we could have about looking at our complete code of ethics. I mean, there's some things that I've seen happen as far as appointments to boards and commissions, as far as disparaging remarks that have been made about your colleagues, and outright mistruths, where people have gone door to door and sent out emails and said things that were absolutely untrue and fed false information into the public. You know, those are things that to me are unethical and they're not moral. I have, you know, been, I would say, coerced into potentially following a council member's initiatives that I felt were immoral and unethical. And to me, we all need to hold each other to much, much higher standards than that. So if we want to turn this discussion into a complete discussion of our ethics and how we behave towards staff and towards the public and towards each other, I think that would be an excellent discussion as well. Interesting mention of the word, just on something specific, is the use of the word benefit. if you use the word benefit in that context, benefit would mean contributions or any sort of efforts from people who oppose the project. Correct? Because they believe that they have some benefit. So, you know, perhaps that's another way to look at it. You know, let's continue this discussion. And again, I think we all need to hold each other to the highest standard. And I think we can get there. Appreciate you bringing this up, Councilmember Palermo. This is something I feel very passionately about, and I think anyone who knows me knows that as well.
Thank you, Councilmember Wilson. I know that ethics in that discussion can be a huge discussion, so I agree with you. That may be something to come up in the future. Is there any other comments regarding this initiative that we're talking about tonight with respect to recusing? If so, Councilmember Judy.
Yes, back to, I feel if we are going to go down this road, looking at 3667A3, we need to look at recusal, possible recusal of those giving money to opposition as well. Okay. So let's make it fair for everybody. As the state law does here, which is equitable because it's for both parties in a zoning case. So if we're going to go down this road, I want to make sure people that are in opposition that donate to a certain candidate, well, there's possible recusal as well based upon certain elements. Because otherwise, we've got it already right here. We don't need this. And so we've also got a whole list of state laws about donations, recusals, you know, showing who's done what. And, you know, I think for us, what we're trying to do here is come up with a solution where I don't think there's a problem. There might be certain people within the city. But again, let's go back to the 0.005% that signed your petition. This is what we're trying to create here is a feeling that there's corruption. And there's a feeling that the people on this sitting right here have done something wrong. When you said earlier, you felt one of them, there was something that happened, and you felt the other one, there was nothing. You said that in your opening statements. Well, I can tell you in that one where the checks of the donation were shown on thing, I made a decision based upon one of the largest neighborhoods in the city, sending a letter of support from their board saying, we want this project. It had nothing to do with, I don't even remember, with $250 or $500 I got. And if you think people are going to be bought for that, then we've got bigger problems. So if we're going to go down this road, I would like to look at this as our model. And that's something I would support, pro and con. Let's do it fairly. And then I think it's all fair. I would like to ask Mr. Halsey a question based upon this right here, which I know you're familiar with, and what we have in front of us tonight. Would city legal recommend adoption of this policy as written?
No, I consulted with the city attorney, and we don't think it's necessary given the state law. We have expressed the opinion that Roswell can set a greater standard, meaning you could lessen the amount from $250 to $100, as Councilmember Palermo has done. When you get into the recusal, you have the problem, the way this is structured, even if someone has accepted a contribution, if you wind up not having a quorum, that person comes back into it. So you're going to have inherent problems that are going to have legal ramifications down the road. if you adopt what the state did back in 1986 and say you simply disclose who gave you money and they have to give the specifics, and we do that in our application. Our applicants always have to state that. The people in opposition are supposed to say whether they contributed $250 to anyone on mayor or council. I don't think we have a mechanism that we actually do that. I'm not sure that it's being enforced. So, you know, as a matter of, if you ask me, is it necessary? No, but it's the policy that council gets to decide. And so the majority of council, whatever you decide, it can't conflict with state law, but you can make the standard greater than state law.
Well, thank you, Mr. Halsey. I look forward to continuing this conversation based around equality of the sides in this moving forward, because if we're going to look at this from a city, as you say, you have a lot of emails and folks that believe this and lawyers that believe this. I have a lot of people that believe this. I've heard some people that believe what you believe. But I think at the end of the day, this is about equality and not putting a cloud on people that donate to people's campaigns that they are corrupt, or the people they donate to are corrupt, and therefore requiring recusal. And again, back to the direct benefit, I completely disagree with Councilmember Zapata in that the landscaper for the place, you know, you might know that. You might know the person that's selling the paint. You might know the builder. You might know the realtor. And so therefore this gets very, very, very slippery. Again, we now are discriminating against landowners in our city. So if the landowner last night, not the applicant, the landowner benefits and gave us money, so that means somebody that owns land in Roswell can't use their land for what they are entitled by the Constitution, sell it for highest and best use, and then not give money to somebody as a campaign. I think this is very slippery. I'm willing to talk about it and try to figure out what's best for the city, but we got to be equitable, because and if there is corruption, hey, let's go find it.
Thank you, Councilor Plummer. There's been quite a bit of input. I think good input, open input for you. If you would, is there maybe any closing comments you would like to make, or anything to sort of wrap this up, and then we can, you all can continue, you know, the discussions as you try to get something written for the next meeting.
Well, this is very valuable discussion to hear the concerns and the reasons for opposition. It's a helpful discussion.
Sure.
Couple different aspects. Again, when you talk about, talking about clear and direct, if somebody clearly directly profits from it, for example, a landowner selling their property, somebody opposing that turns into subjectivity in the sense of what's the definition of opposing. If somebody says, hey, they should it should be 2 stories instead of 3, but approving this, is that opposition? If it's giving just recommendations, questions, concerns, and also, again, when they're not gonna personally profit from it, when they're just trying to look for what is best for the city, how do we keep Roswell being a great place? And again, a real concern that I'm seeing and that I'm hearing is that you feel it's discrimination to a landowner if a council member recuses themselves from voting on their project when they took money. And I think what I heard too, Councilman Judy, and I think one of the major differences we have is I think you expressed a misunderstanding of zoning and how it works. You said, you used the example for last night, and the developers should be able to build on their property the highest and best use. There is no obligation under the Constitution, under Georgia law, Roswell law, anywhere for a developer to be able to be automatically allowed to build the highest and best use. There's aspects of meeting the character, following the rules of our zoning code. These are all things that matter. And again, there's no discrimination. Anybody that wants to develop their property for more intense uses has that right to request, and they will get a fair hearing from mayor and council. Just because it doesn't include one council member that they gave money to doesn't mean that it's not a fair hearing from the body. What this is doing is creating a better understanding and perception and being more fair for residents to let them feel really invested in the city, like their voice matters.
So we'll continue the conversation as long as we don't start getting too far down into specifics. So if there's comments about this matter, Councilmember Judy, go ahead. You had your hand up first.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, when I said highest and best use, you can apply for a highest and best use. I didn't say you could get highest and best use. I said you could apply for highest and best use. And at the end of the day, it's up to the council to decide. And therefore, a landowner should be able to do that. And that's what was my point. I was not saying they're guaranteed highest and best use. Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate that. Any other comments on this item? I think this probably isn't the end of it. It's probably still a long way to go, but there was a lot of discussion tonight, so I appreciate that. Anything else from anybody? This is our last item. I don't see anything else. We're adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher.
Thank y'all.